Today's subject is planning and designing for climatic changes. It is not a new issue actually, but we Malayalis have become suddenly sensitive on this issue because of the recent floods. We also had a bit of a share of tsunami some time back, and Kerala is also in zone 3 on the earthquake zone classification. Our topography changes, in a small state like this, we have the hills and the coastlines and the midlands and the lakes, a lot of changes in the topography. And we have many threats hanging over head, like rapid urbanization and deforestation. We are literally between the devil and the deep sea. God cannot help God's own country unless we help ourselves. It is time to wake up and put the house in order before it is too late. We have destroyed major part of the forest. We have made roads slicing our hills. We have changed topography by cutting and leveling for construction. Constructed huge retaining walls, put quarries in ecologically sensitive areas, and dams and check dams everywhere. Since matters are like this, planning and designing for climatic challenges gains top priority. TiE as an organization standing for entrepreneurship also wants to explore the possibility for entrepreneurship and social commitment even when we are recovering from a disaster like a phoenix rising from the ashes. CEPT is a fine example of exploring the opportunities at the right time and the right place to save the loom industries Chedamangalam, a small weavers village from total destruction. The flood also opens the eyes of all of us, whether we are doing the right thing as far as development is concerned in terms of planning and construction. We have three eminent speakers today. Professor Miki, retired professor of architecture from CEPT University. Professor K.T. Ravindran, academic advisor, RICS School of and Built Environment, Amity University. And finally, architect Peter Rich, founder and principal architect of Messrs. Peter Rich Architects from Johannesburg, South Africa. So what we'll have is we'll give about 10 to 15 minutes for each of the speakers to speak a bit, and then probably we can have a discussion, question and answer session, whatever. Before I call Professor Miki Desai, just a small brief introduction of him. As I said, Professor Miki Desai was a professor of CEPT University, India, and he was heading the master's program in sustainable architecture. He is the author of many books. If I start elaborating, it will take more time, including Architecture in Gujarat, now the new book on Kerala. He is also visiting faculty for Zurich, MIT, and University of California, Berkeley, USA. He has done workshops in Goa College of Architecture, a National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad, etc. He is also the recipient of Earthwatch Grant, a Fulbright Fellowship.
It's very difficult to speak about a culture to which you don't belong. However, I have belonged to this place through research and through looking at the kind of environments people share while living into or living in. My first memories are based on Potakat's Vishakanya, which is a book long forgotten probably, but that book tells me about how the first clearances were made in the Kerala, which was then a jungle, full of trees. Habitation was just happening. That's the kind of time it is set into. And there are many descriptions which make you feel there is no human being here, only the trees and the animals, and that humid atmosphere of the place is ruling or ruled by the nature. Then I come for my research and I look at Bharatapura River. And Bharatapura, I have seen 400 to 500 meters of width of the river, only sand. And so I asked, did this river ever flow? Not that I don't know of such examples in Gujarat. He says, yes, from bank to bank. So that was my second experience at mutely looking at the God's own land. Third one was, then I started coming more often, and the research continued for about 7 years. And I started seeing the hyacinth growing. I don't know how many square kilometers of hyacinth there is there on the waters of Kerala today. But that became very alarming to me. And then over a period, I started seeing rich houses with Doric and Ionic columns and a pediment colored in red, blue, and green. That's when I got alarmed, saying, what has happened? And all this while, and I don't mind calling myself a traditionalist for the moment, all this while I was looking at the architecture of Kerala, the wooden architecture of Kerala. Now I'll try to connect it to the matter of climatology and house form, climate and house form. And that's where the lessons from traditional architecture of Kerala come handy. First thing it tells you is that fragility of natural environments and unpredictability of natural forces. While I'm saying this, I would like you to remember all 4 experiences of mine and the recent one that we experienced. Then the second thing that I observed was materiality and craft tradition of canonical architecture and architecture of systemic approach. Perhaps, in the whole country there is only one state, one region, where this has been done in such a mature manner and without losing the path ever. Even today, similar kind of architecture is being done. An architecture that has its own language, that has its own phrases, and that has its own syntax and grammar. This is where, again, I'd like to interject the whole idea of how to bring in new technology or new material is a very, very sensitive issue. And I'm sure the architects and the critiques of architecture here are capable of getting this going if required. Now I'm going to describe 3 elements that have impressed me the most, which are part of the house type of Kerala. One is the Charupadi. And Charupadi at different scales, right from a small house to a large temple. How does Charupadi work? And what a beautiful element it is. What joy there is of the craftsman to craft it, and what permanent comfort it gives to the person sitting inside is all well known to the Kerala residents. Second one is, and I don't know the Malayali name of this, but this is found in many houses, especially of the Agraharam type, where at upper story there is a platform window where platform comes out and one sleeps on the platform while the window provides you the ventilation. Large courtyard as well as small courtyard, both being part of a typology each, is an experiment, believe me, that has happened in this part of the world, which has so many repercussions before we get into new material or new technology, that if that not retained, what will happen is anybody's guess. With this, I'm also trying to look at telling you the tone of the book that I have slated. I'm very indebted to many people, many residents and namudris of temples who have helped me to do this work, because one of the issues about this book is drawing and what kind of drawings can be done. The book is replete with photographic images and hand-done drawings. Where necessary, there are computer-aided drawings. But I sincerely would like it to become part of our education in architecture. Having said this, I have a critique of the fact that we are a multi-layered society of multiple communities in multiple regions. North sees South differently, South sees North differently, and even in the education of areas such as built environment, we are not looking at what is in store for us to understand the architecture of India. One of the reasons why I have written this book is to say that each region of this country has something to offer in terms of architecture, and that if we went about modernism in architecture without looking at these regions and their architectures, then we are missing out on a huge, huge possibility of creating new architecture for many, many communities of this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gopakumar. And thank you, TiEcon, for calling me to speak here. Even though I have been living outside Kerala for the last 55 years, my umbilical cord is still not cut. I continue to be connected, and through my family as well as through language. I speak and read and write Malayalam, and that's kept me connected to Kerala. And I think language is a very critical part of cultural connect that you can develop with a place. Anyway, having said that as a secondary introduction to my legitimacy for standing in front of you today, I have put together a brief presentation, only 8 slides, but they are dense because they are loaded with material, in which I am first giving an overview of the issues related to climate change and how that's going to impact India, and how that's particularly going to impact Kerala, and drawing out of that which are the primary areas which will be impacted by climate change and how those impacts can generate new entrepreneurial enterprises. So this is the broad canvas which I am trying to cover, starting from climate change to what kind of preparedness we have to have in terms of professionalism and skill development to meet the demands of climate change, to what kind of opportunities it throws up for the future employment, future entrepreneurs, to address the issues of climate change. So it's a it's imperative that from both sides we need to view it. We need to combat climate change, and we have to be also looking at it as an opportunity to develop entrepreneurial skills and new areas of skills from that perspective. So I'll very quickly give you, I know that this screen is it readable for everyone? Yeah? Okay, so I think the most critical thing that's happened in the last couple of years is the fact that India has adopted the Sustainable Development Goals. And goal number 13 here, which is only shown in green and the rest have been grayed out, relates to climate change and climate action, they call it. So not just about change, but how action needs to be spanned out from climate issues. So it's very critical that we look at this, the Sustainable Development Goals, as the future driver of all development that we envisage. And climate change has a specific reference to the current condition in Kerala and for this particular discussion as well. Now the map of India shows in grey tone the areas of the coastal areas which will be impacted by climate change. Subsequently, I'll show you how different changes in global warming, how it would impact these coastal areas with specific example on Cochin. And in the chart below, we have marked out in red the growth, urbanization growth in Kerala, which is 47.72%, which is much, much higher than most other places as a state. Now, in terms of the implication of this urbanization is that there is larger and larger concentrations of people coming towards the coastal areas, and the impact of climate change on the coasts are going to impact a huge number of people. And the floods that we have had now is only a precursor to the kind of risk which is coming. Perhaps we should expect the next fury not from the mountains like this time, but from the sea upwards. So Kerala's preparedness for this is very, very critical. This is just to illustrate to you how changes from 2 to 4 degrees in global warming, what kind of impact would it have on the Cochin coast? I'm just using Cochin as an example. The material is available for the entire world, and I've isolated the area which pertains to Cochin. You can see if the climate change takes the global warming to 4 degrees centigrade, this whole sub-region will be turned into a water world. You can see in the last image here that the whole coast is going to be taken over by water, and there will be only little islands of development. If climate change is not arrested, and if we are not able to peg the climate change below 2 degrees centigrade, preferable to 1.5 degrees. Unless this happens by 2100, it's predicted that we won't be able to deal with the issues that will crop up in the coastal areas. All cities like Mumbai, Cochin, Chennai, all coastal cities would go underwater. Literally, they will be inundated with water. Cities will have to be abandoned because no services system would function. None of the investment that we have made in transportation or in terms of urban development will be holding any ground at that time. So, as much as this is the most important impending disaster, it is also the area where we need to do new skill development. Unless this new skill development is done, we will not be able to meet with the climate change issues which are going to come up. This gives you an example of what has been done to the Kerala coast. On one side you have the map of Kerala, and this is 2011 information from the Hindu newspaper, which lists the number of violations of the coastal zone regulations in Kerala alone. They have only isolated the major ports which are located close to water and the estuaries, but we know that there are hundreds of other projects which are actually in danger zone as far as climate change is concerned. There are 5 areas which I have identified where the impact of climate change will be most profoundly felt. First one is food security. Second one is water security. Third is energy security. Fourth is waste management. And fifth is design of development. Now, on the other side, you have an image. The green image is that of the South India, or South Indian region, with just that part of the Western Ghats which are colored in green. Now, if you look at how the water moved during the Madras flood, Chennai floods also actually moved down from what is their Eastern Ghats. You know? An entire catchment area starting from the Ghats downwards, going up to Kanchipuram on one side, and the water going into estuaries, 3 different estuaries in Chennai, is what caused the flood. So it's the big rain that was very, very parallel to what happened in Kerala. But the reasons for the disaster are slightly different, moderately different. The main reason for that in Tamil Nadu was that all the ponding areas were developed for industry. In fact, Tamil Nadu identified as for their industrial growth the entire water catchment basin. And all the big industries, including all the big automobile industries, are in fact located in the water catchment area. So as a result, there is great multiplication of runoff. There is a multiplication of soil eroding into ponds, which lost their capacity. And this ponding system in Tamil Nadu goes back to thousands of years. The entire irrigation system in Tamil Nadu was a designed system. The irrigation system was designed for cultivation of paddy. And it still remains the central location where paddy is cultivated in Tamil Nadu. And all that came underwater. And that water came and inundated the Chennai city. And we all have seen the images of those disasters. So the last 2 major problems that we have had are both due to changes in climatic conditions in the hills. The next one, it's predicted, will be from the coast. Now, there are also external factors which impact all this. It's not just our activity, human activity, which increases the global warming, but there are also impacts which are caused by solar flares, which are not in our control at all. It has a 12-year cycle. Every time there is a flare-up in the solar system, there are changes in the gravitational flow on the Earth, and there are subsequent changes in the relationship between water and land. So, and there are also very big potential for earthquake, which is looming large. So, and we should be careful that we are not free from all this. It is also said that when you have planetary alignment, that's more than 3 planets aligned in one linear direction, it changes the gravitational flow, magnetic flow on the Earth, and can cause calamities. So we now know that the global warming is proceeding in a very, very alarming rate. There are changes happening in the undercurrents of the seawater. The warm water which used to circulate in the sea is now turning cold, and the water flows are reversed. And that's the kind of thing which caused the last ice age in Europe, where everything just froze. People survived in minuscule parts here and there, and we have now again repopulated the same area. So there are all these dangers looming, and that relationship also primarily impacts food security. I have listed here the key areas where food security will be impacted. I will not read through it because it will take me too much time to do so. But the kind of new skills that it offers is what we need to look at in this particular conference, because this is about entrepreneurship. And these are areas where new academic programs have to be envisaged. Education has to move towards this direction. And training and entrepreneurship has to move towards this direction to be able to meet the disasters that will be impending in climate change. I'm not reading it because I'm sure it's readable for you. Next, I go to water security and how changes in the sourcing and supply of water will create great calamitous conditions. It is said that all the populations in the subcontinent will be forced to move towards the water. That's all the settled areas in the central parts of India will be forced to move towards the sea because there will be no water in those areas. Now, when there is even 2-degree changes in the atmosphere, there's great changes which happens in the capacity of the soil to hold moisture, and that has a direct relationship with insect life. And we'll find that insects, even by a small degree of change in climate, insects begin to multiply much faster. And then it'll be finally entering into all the agricultural zones, and we'll be creating a new kind of refugees in our cities, which I have called the climate refugees. People who are forced to leave agriculture and their land because of the changes that happen in climate. Now, there are new skills that we need to develop as far as water management is concerned, which I have listed here, starting from regional water management planning to water management related education and institutional network. Now, it's the most heartening thing that you can find in, for instance, the example of Singapore, is that they have just set up a couple of years ago something called the Water Academy of Singapore, who are doing exclusively research on water and how to manage water, how to convert wastewater into potable drinking water. Singapore now mixes the treated water, treated sewage water in their mainstream supply, and that's what you get on the taps in Singapore, and you can drink that water. That's possibly where we'll have to move towards. A few years ago, I remember having gone to a conference in California, which was organized by Cisco, and there they gave us beer that was made from sewage. The entire conference was supplied with beer during the party made from sewage. And there was no way one could distinguish between any kind of beer and that beer. It was the same. So there are many, many opportunities that lie ahead in water management. I'm just giving you 2 extreme examples. I'll move to energy security, which is perhaps one of the most critical kind of securities that we need to move towards. It is also, energy security is also an area which can give rise to nuclear proliferation of nuclear energy, which carries with it its own dangers and catastrophic kind of dangers, which once it crosses the point of catastrophe, we will not be able to handle. So energy security is a very, very critical factor, and our cities and our human settlements consume maximum amount of energy. And there are many ways in which you can respond in terms of creation of new skills for energy security. First one is demand management, which you do by compact cities and mixed land use and urban design. 2, you move towards energy management, education, mainstream energy research. So knowledge creation, application, and generation of jobs is a cycle that we need to envisage in all these fields. The fourth and one of the very critical things, particularly in relationship to Kerala, is waste management. We know that we have zero waste management system. We know that we have massive problems in every settlement. Nobody wants your waste in their backyard. They are resisting, and it's quite rightly so that they should resist. There is no reason why Cochin's waste must go to a nearby village and pollute their water and create stink there. There's no reason why they should take that, and they are protesting. So as a result, there is no way to get out of this. So we'll have to do some these are very drastic governmental measures which are required. First one is waste buyback, which is partly now in the law, but it has to be very strictly enforced by industries who create packaging materials. a huge amount of solid waste that we generate in cities is just packaging materials, not the actual material that we consume, but the material that is used to sex up that object so that it can be marketed. So the responsibility to recycle this should be squarely vested in the industry which generates it. And that should be legally made necessary for each one to buy it back. Now, I'm just giving you this as an example. Again, it goes back to capacity building at municipal level. It's a detailed subject. I'll take a long time if I have to go into it. But the conceptual framework for this was, in fact, brought out by a very well-known architect called Richard Rogers many years ago when he wrote a little book. If you can get hold of it, do get hold of it. Richard Rogers wrote this book called Cities for a Small Planet. It's a tiny book, and it contains the most unbelievable words of wisdom written a good 10 years ago. It's when climate change was not an issue. Richard Rogers was talking about these issues, and he talked about the circular metabolism which needs to be brought into cities, where on one end we consume, and on the other end we recycle that material to generate new materials. Now, the final point that I'd like to make is about collaborative urban design. All these different skills, all these different methods of dealing with climate change cannot be seen in isolation. They have to be part of a larger urban system. And the design of that urban system is as critical as the design of each entrepreneurial activity. This is something which we need to realize, and our current methods of planning, physical planning, what we call town planning, is not capable of dealing with this because it deals with the 2 dimension, and unless you deal with 3 dimensions, you cannot even effectively bring in an ICT system which has its own limitations. So unless the form of cities are limited, we will not be able to introduce systems which can function efficiently, because there is a correlation between the capacity of the system and capacity of the demand that is generated by the city. Now, I'd like to emphasize one point here, which is the second point which is in my list, which is city form and the fine textured economy. This fine textured economy is about the most central aspect of life in our Indian cities, which gives vibrancy to our cities, which makes everything affordable for us, is the entrepreneurial tendency or entrepreneurial skills of our ordinary people who become vendors and small traders and small manufacturers and small service providers. This is what gives vibrancy to our city. And natural tendency of capitalism is to move towards amalgamation, aggrandization, larger and larger investments, and larger text of development. This classic debate we have had between either the Reliance stores or the Walmart and the ordinary trader is where that debate is focused. So it's very critical that we protect this fine textured economy if we want to remain not merely vibrant in our cities, but also we want to address the issues of climate change that's brought out by big manufacturing and big trade and big movement of materials and goods, which actually has huge amount of embodied energy in it. Now, the final part that there's a number of issues, I won't go into every one of them, but I would like to say in conclusion that the increasing complexity, scale, and climate change-induced human conditions demand the integration of nature, technology, and urban design. Let's not forget that technology and nature are not antithesis to each other. Nature is something too large to have an antithesis through technology. Technology is just an instrument. It depends on how through design we use technology. And we have to intelligently design our systems in such a way that technology is able to give us answers to a lot of the natural issues which are going to crop up. With that, I'll conclude. I'm sorry if I took too much time. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all.
Next speaker, architect Peter Rich from South Africa. He's a founder and principal architect of Messrs. Peter Rich Architects, Parktown, Johannesburg, South Africa. A postgraduate in architecture. Peter has over 20 years of experience in urban housing and cultural heritage projects. He specializes in human settlements, especially when respectfully interacting with the cultures, very important, other than one's own. So he's basically on cultures embracing architecture and design. This is a very prominent point which we can make use of. We are using best practice situations demonstrating the advantage of more dense living to guide urbanization process. Probably will explain this. He has a recipient of several awards in architecture, national and international. Peter, please, the stage is yours.
Right, I want to thank you. It's a privilege to speak after such two distinguished speakers who so clearly articulated the urgency of the position we're in. And I'm just here as a facilitator for a small initiative happening 120 kilometers north of Ravindran at a place called Arnmulla, a village. And it's where the Strategic Disaster Management Agency has approached the chapter of the IIA in Ravindran, driven by two remarkable leaders, to actually tackle this particular problem in a short and long term with the idea of coming up with good outcomes and to look what the new normal can be. And one of the most remarkable things about this exercise, which is leading to a masterclass which will start on the 19th of January, whereby we're bringing 5 people from the developed world who are leading architects to sort of head up a masterclass that is facilitated on 4 sites by 5 mixed discipline professionals and has 20 architects per group. So we're looking at about 100 people who, on the back of interns and schools of architecture who've done the research, we're going to have a look at principles that can be applied to the new normal. What's been remarkable about this initiative is I arrived to find that there were a group of young professionals in their 20s and 30s who were taking a leadership role. They were headed up by Ganga Dilip, who's in the audience, who at question time I'd asked to answer questions, who's a pupil of KT who's just spoken, which is amazing because you're getting this continuity. And while I'm on the stage, I want to say to Miki Desai, I ferret out in Kerala the students he taught who have learned from him and in their professional contemporary work are demonstrating the value of a Kerala architecture transferred into a contemporary idiom. So that's the product, that's the dividend that Miki gets from the work that he's shown. And his book is so opportune, it's come out at just the right time for what we need to interrogate. What's happened in this particular situation is initially there was relief work that was done which opened one's eyes on the part of the IIA, and secondly there was trying to find the professional teams who over a period of 2 months could do the necessary interrogation that was needed. I'm trying to see how I can advance the slide. I'm not getting the slide to move, sorry. I'm not going to go through all of the pictures in detail because the work's been done into trying to determine the DNA of the human habitat and the culture of the people that are there. Work's been done into the topology. The topography, it's not just typologies, it's the topography. It's okay, that's fine. I'll just use this, it's fine, thank you. And the topography is numerous ones. Now, we're looking at a defined area, and it's looking at the ecology, it's looking at a rapid visual assessment of what's there, it's looking at history and culture, it's looking at ecology, and it's looking at the effects of infrastructure like roads and airports being built in wetlands, which you all know very well from your own airport, the consequences of that. Fortunately, that's been stopped. And so what we're doing, by the time we get to the masterclass, we've actually done the homework, which will facilitate multidisciplinary people who are involved with an environment having a look at how they can realize that environment. And what we've done is we've divided it into 4 groups. I want to just get to the particular slide which shows you that's the transition of land types, the economy and tourism, which is prevalent, and the infrastructure implications that are there. I'm going through this quickly because there's no point in looking in too much detail. And then we've chosen 4 sites, and 2 of them are on either side of the temple in the town. It's applications being made for World Heritage status. And the one affects the craft industry, the other one affects the tourist industry, which has almost been wiped out. And then there are 2 sites, site 3 and 4, which are in the wetlands where a house of poor people is completely covered by the 5 meters of water. And the other one is a knoll that sticks out of the water with sloping sides. We're documenting the edge conditions and also what's happened to the people settling on the hill that was taken away to form an airport that fortunately hasn't been realized. So we're taking good and worse situations. And what we hope to do is determine outcomes. Now, there are 4 typologies. The one is seaming the city and the river, the Temple and the Pemba River, looking at public space. The second one is cultural identity for the new normal, the temple and tourism. And we're coming up with a tourism report at the end of the masterclass. Inverting the externalities of ecological values, the low-lying punjas, and enhancing the dynamics of vulnerable communities in the low-lying areas. And it's going to take a lot of courage to address these issues, but we're realizing it has to be done. And what really excites me is that it's young minds who, with a considerable zeal, are actually working with, in a collaborative way, all of you to get to a point where they can actually make those right decisions. The masterclass is going to be from the 19th to the 27th. We've given a list of outcomes to those people. It will include Solana Benitez from Paraguay, Gloria Cabral, who got the British prize for the best woman in architecture in the world. It's going to include a Mexican, Xavier Mundoz Menendez, whose own house on the Gulf of Mexico is built to be flooded when they have their equivalent of the monsoon. And then there'll be a team. My son and I will form another team. And we're just leaders of that team. We're provocateurs. We're catalysts for change. We're there to see how the new normal, in a respectful way that respects culture and that is enabling, can be created, and how we actually embrace people so that they can be empowered with this outcome. It's not an engineering solution. That's going to not solve any problem. It's not a technical solution. It's how we actually, and what we've got to do is we've got to look at what is that level. If this level was abnormal, that in most cases came almost 2.5 meters to people who are on high ground, what is the level we're going to look at? And we've got to factor in when we do design that with the rise in sea level, do we add 900 millimeters or 1.5 millimeters so that we're designing the new normal for a new future? And we've got to collectively make those decisions. So we're all in this. We need your help, your collaboration. We're running the same races. There's a wonderful group from the Avani School of Design, headed by Tony Joseph, which has also got their own group that they're looking at. And we're going to collaboratively share this knowledge and share its outcome with all of you so that we can actually see how collectively we can make informed decisions that have good outcomes. Thank you very much.
The idea is she's also going to answer some of the questions if you put forward questions. So request the audience the question time to come forward with questions and answers or suggestions, whatever. We have 10 or another 10 minutes maximum. Thank you.
Professor Ravindran, one of the finest aspects of Asian and perhaps more so Indian urbanity is fine textured economy. And I'm so glad that somebody is bringing it out in such a positive manner that cities of our country are actually surviving by and through this fine textured economy. That is one. And two, nature technology. These are the two areas on which if you could give little more emphasis and talk to us about it, it would be nice. Thank you. About fine texture. And second one is nature technology.
Well, thank you, Miki, for scoring a goal on the same side. Thank you. Basically, I'll take the example of Walmart, which to me epitomizes the big grain, large grain capitalist development. When I say capitalist, I don't mean I'm not a communist. Let me make that very clear. Because the moment you say capitalist, then you are a communist, which is not so, okay? So let me make that very clear. But I'm looking at the Walmart phenomenon from a city design perspective. Walmarts are particularly located in peripheral areas of cities where there's large amount of land available for creating huge sheds, which are not architecture, they're just plain shed. They're building, but they're not architecture because they have no character, they don't say anything. They're just huge space which is encompassed by the simplest and the most inexpensive material possible. And they are large in texture. And they're located in large areas of land where not only the big shed can be accommodated, but also there will have to be a big parking lot. Now, these things, to my mind, represents from an urban design perspective, the final loss of all finesse of city living, where everything is sacrificed at the altar of scale in economy so that you can sell it really cheap, things very cheap, huge turnover, no frills, and big money. Now, this big money moves across the world. We know that they are making an entry into India as well very soon. And this is actually a phenomena which is quite possibly India's future. That means huge amount of commuting, large distances, big roads, flyovers, huge parking lots, and the works that go with that kind of shopping. Now, I'm told in Sweden today, none of the neighborhood centers work, original neighborhoods which have been designed, where ideally, originally it was conceptualized for women or woman who's pushing a pram to go shopping. You know? Those things don't work anymore. They all shut down. And everybody is shopping on the highway in these huge Walmart, reborn Walmarts in different parts of the world. There's a big change that happens in the quality of life of people who live in such cities, where you drive half an hour or 45 minutes if you want to buy a matchbox. There's something phenomenally wrong with this, something fundamentally wrong about this, and this is unfortunately where we are moving to. And all the problems of climate that we find today is in fact a result of, I'm using this Walmart as a metaphor. I'm sorry, I have nothing against the company called Walmart. They are a very successful company. Maybe every entrepreneur should emulate the success of that company. But they are, metaphorically speaking, one of the things to which India may move to. And at the core of climate change lies this kind of movement in our economy. So that's why it's very important that every pushcart that you see on the road is an act of resistance to this change. we have to see our cities and the vibrancy that we have in our cities on the streets by vendors and others. We need to see it as the ultimate expression of entrepreneurship. If India is talking about entrepreneurship, we have the best kind of entrepreneurship in the world. Every person who is sitting at home is opening a little shop in front of his house. I mean, what better entrepreneurship can you have? You take the example of if, say, we cook 300 million meals every afternoon, okay? Because everyone eats lunch at afternoon. And if the government wants to create this 300 meals, or if a company wants to produce this 300 million meals every afternoon and 3 times a day like that, you can imagine what kind of an enterprise it will require, what kind of capital it would require, what kind of scale it would demand, well, what amount of transportation it would imply, transportation of goods and services. Whereas it is done every day by ordinary people in their kitchen, in their every afternoon. No impact is felt. You know? So there is a very critical factor called scale, which is not just about scale of economy, it's about scale of cities, it's about scale in urban design. So it's very important for me as an urban designer to think of this metaphor of the large business houses and the small businesses which actually prove counterproductive to or erodes the foundation of that large ones. That's very, very important for me. This is how I can explain it. To some extent, it's too long, so I'll leave your second question to a personal discussion at lunch.
All right. Before the young girl answers that, I would like to ask a question. One is that, after hearing Katie and the others here, it's a scary future that we're looking forward to. I live in Cochin on the backwaters, and I don't know whether I should shift myself. And I am a bourgeois, I'm a capitalist, and I would like to call myself an entrepreneur. And I sympathize with the communists. With that background, this term, the new normal, is to be achieved. And I think Katie said that we've got about 80 years to have this 2100. We should achieve this the temperature 2 degrees drop. I don't think we'll achieve it. The way we are going, we'll double it. In that circumstance, the new normal is, I think the only young girl who's going to see 2100 is she in our audience. And I'd like to hear from her. Well, I believe that she's had a seminar, a conference, or talking about that. And therefore, we are a group of entrepreneurs having hitched our destiny to the coast of Kerala, which we've just faced the biggest catastrophe of our life. We never thought it could happen. It could be caused by the God, or it caused by the operators of the valves, I don't know. But that's the I know my time is limited, but let's hear from her. Yeah, the young girl.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I would like to add a few points from the grassroots level explorations we did there and the kind of arguments we came up with connecting to both the discussions we had right now. So the classic example, like how Professor Katie put across Walmart, the classic exemplification from Aramula would be the exercise of the airport that we saw there. So we know that there was this proposal and it didn't work out. But if you go and look at the ground specificities, what you'll find is a canal has been blocked first and the water movement is blocked, which blocked the entire agriculture practice to a huge sect of punja, that's how they locally call for the wetlands. So there is a hill. So the hill is being cut and the punja is being filled. So the canal is blocked, the wetland is filled. Yes, the project didn't take off. But that doesn't mean that we save the ecosystem there. And now what we are seeing there is encroachment, which is kind of another sort of speculation. We don't know where it is going to lead to. Because there is if we actually do ground research, we'll understand there has been a trajectory of different sort of political movements, and hence the equation of development is getting channelized there. So here, the word I would like to add is externalities. Because what we saw there is the ecological values becoming an externality when we give a certain set of definition and meaning for development. Because like Walmart, airport is another huge bulk which got branded there in the name of development like everywhere else. So when we say the ecosystem is saved, it is always taken to be at the cost of development that was supposed to come there. So the argument we came across and we are trying to work out is, can't a revival equation be equally valued like the way we do development right now? So it's not about the sea rise, or it's not just about the water level rise, whether it happens or not. In the long run, how are we actually going to find out the right paradigm shift for development in the context of new normal? So that is how we have highlighted the new normal and placed it there. So in the long run, what is the meaning and what is the value chain? Their economy is quite valuable because we have been saving nature always with an assumption of getting compromised. So this economy is not just compromised by this bulk development. From the field notes that we gathered from Aramula, the entire fine-grained economical network is vulnerable, heavily vulnerable to the climate change. So with the new intervention, as an illustration of new normal, how can we actually connect the equation of a spatial intervention and an economic growth? So that is actually the meaning of the entire exercise we have been doing there. Hope it's conveyed well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope the government also understands what the parameters you are looking at. Anyway, it was a very good session.